Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Japanese internment camps were established during World War II, right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, through the executive order signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt from 1942 to 1945.
People of Japanese ancestry were taken from their homes, sent to an isolated location, and interned there until the war was over.
It is considered one of the most major violations of the U.S. Constitution and American rights in history.
The internment camps were originally created to keep Japanese spies from gathering information about America and reporting back to their country, but eventually all Americans with at least 1/16 of Japanese ancestry were interned.
Numerous homes were searched and raided by the FBI because they wanted to clear out any connections they had with the enemy.
At that point, you're not really worried about the future. And what's the use of worrying? We have no idea if we'll ever be released from this place. So you make the best of what you have and what you can gain for yourself by taking classes and learning, making friends.
Many of the Japanese Americans interned were originally from the United States and had no previous connection to Japan.
Said I went to war to fight against Hitler and Tojo, to prove that didn't make any difference what your race or ancestry was to be an American citizen. I think basically that's what it was all about.
Debate over the internment camps, however, was not one-sided.
The American government thought that imprisoning Japanese Americans was the only way to solve their dilemma.
They set up conversion camps and sent out propaganda to gain support from the doubtful Americans.
These posters and hateful messages were posted on windows and doors of businesses and homes across the West Coast.
The signs would go up, "No Japs allowed, you sons of bitches killed my son at Iwo Jima."
Despite the extreme racism and invasions, families went to the camps without resistance. They wanted to show the American government that they were loyal and they could cooperate with the government's orders.
Life in an internment camp was extremely harsh. As Japanese Americans arrived in their hastily built tar barracks, they were faced with poor living conditions and very little supplies.
In that 20 by 25 foot room held my mother, my dad, 2 sisters, my brother, and me.
In addition, the Japanese Americans were restricted to a very strict curfew within the camp.
When it used to get dark, they used to have searchlights because there used to be these watch guard towers, and the searchlights would, come shining. So we used to play games. Being little kids, they used to have a little ditch right by the barbed wire fence, and we used to hide every time that the searchlight came. We used to kind of duck down, so they won't see us. But now that I think about it, I think there was a grown-up that did get shot because of the searchlight.
Several Japanese American children spent most of their childhood behind barbed wire in conversion camps. They were placed in schools that made them more, unquote, American.
However, despite Japanese Americans being interned, the racism didn't stop.
Come on in for the jamboree. And they'd write back and say, no, those are prisoners of war, and that we're not going in there. So they'd write back and say, no, these are Boy Scouts of America. They wear the same uniform you do. They read the same manual you do. But none of them came in.
Norman Mineta, a survivor of the internment camps, later became a cabinet member under 2 U.S. presidents and fought for equality to Japanese Americans under the Capitol Dome.
In 1998, Norman joined forces with his friend Alan Simpson to pass the Civil Liberties Act signed by President Ronald Reagan, formally apologizing to Japanese Americans and granted reparations to those who were actually interned into one of the conversion camps.
Today, Asian Americans continue to receive hate for their ancestry.
This leaves the question, have Asian Americans really been freed? Will they ever be accepted for who they are, American citizens?